Welcome. In the vast panorama of human history marked by periods of great innovation and progress, there exist times of unimaginable destruction and upheaval. These are the times of global conflict, events so cataclysmic that they leave an indelible mark on the very soul of our world. From the trenches of Europe to the Pacific's islands, the battlefields have reshaped maps, toppled empires, and given rise to new ideologies. Join us now as we embark on a journey, a solemn exploration of these global wars. We will delve into the minds of the leaders who shaped these conflicts, unearth the experiences of those who fought on the front lines, and bear witness to the profound and lasting consequences of these monumental clashes. Our journey will take us from the dawn of the 20th century to the complex geopolitical landscape of the present day, revealing the intricate tapestry of cause and effect that defines our modern world. This is a story of tragedy and resilience, of innovation and devastation, a story that continues to unfold even as we speak. Welcome to our deep dive into the major global wars that have shaped human history. From the trenches of World War I to the digital battlegrounds of today, we'll explore the causes, key events, and lasting consequences of these monumental conflicts. Our story begins in the summer of 1914. Europe, a continent brimming with technological advancement and cultural vibrancy, found itself on the precipice of disaster. A complex web of alliances, fueled by unchecked nationalism and imperial ambition, had created a powder keg ready to explode. The spark, the catalyst that ignited this global inferno, came with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, in the seemingly insignificant city of Sarajevo. Austria-Hungary, backed by Germany, issued an ultimatum to Serbia, the alleged incubator of the assassination plot. When Serbia failed to meet all the demands, the intricate system of alliances kicked in, drawing nation after nation into the abyss. Germany, fearing a two-front war, unleashed its Schlieffen Plan, a bold but ultimately flawed strategy to knock France out of the war with a lightning-fast offensive through neutral Belgium. The initial German advance was swift, but the French and British forces rallied at the Marne River, halting the German onslaught and dashing any hopes for a quick victory. The Western Front, a jagged scar stretching across northeastern France, solidified into a brutal stalemate, a testament to the deadly efficiency of modern weaponry. Here, in a nightmarish landscape of mud, barbed wire, and constant shelling, a new form of warfare emerged. Trench warfare. Millions of young men, driven by patriotism or conscripted into service, found themselves trapped in this subterranean world. Trench warfare was a brutal, dehumanizing experience. Rats, disease, and the constant threat of enemy fire took a heavy toll. Major offensives, often resulting in hundreds of thousands of casualties, yielded little ground and only deepened the stalemate. The Battle of Verdun, a 10-month struggle for a few miles of ravaged earth, epitomized the futility of this new type of war. Across the continent, other fronts blazed. The Gallipoli campaign, a disastrous attempt by the Allied powers to capture the Dardanelles Strait, resulted in heavy casualties for both sides, particularly for the young men of Australia and New Zealand. In the east, the vastness of the Russian Empire proved a formidable challenge for the Central Powers. However, Russia's own internal struggles, exacerbated by the war, were pushing the nation toward a revolution that would have far-reaching consequences. In 1917, the United States, compelled by German unrestricted submarine warfare and the Zimmermann telegram, a secret diplomatic cable intercepted by the British, abandoned its neutrality and joined the Allied cause. The influx of fresh American troops and resources tipped the balance in favor of the Allies. On November 11, 1918, after more than 4 years of unimaginable bloodshed, the guns finally fell silent. The world had been irrevocably changed. The Great War, as it came to be known, claimed the lives of over 16 million people, leaving countless others physically and emotionally scarred. Entire generations were decimated, their potential extinguished in the trenches. The Treaty of Versailles, intended to ensure lasting peace, instead sowed the seeds of future conflict. Germany, burdened by crippling reparations and blamed for the war, became fertile ground for resentment and the rise of extremist ideologies. The League of Nations, a noble but ultimately flawed attempt to prevent future wars through collective security, lacked the power and resolve to enforce its mandates. The world, weary from conflict, hoped for a lasting peace, but the scars of the Great War ran deep and the seeds of future conflict had already been sown. A mere 2 decades after the guns fell silent on the Western Front, the world found itself once again engulfed in global conflict. The seeds of resentment sown by the Treaty of Versailles, coupled with the devastating effects of the Great Depression, had created fertile ground for extremist ideologies to take root. In Germany, Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party, fueled by a toxic brew of nationalism, anti-Semitism, and a thirst for revenge, rose to power, promising to restore German glory and overturn the perceived injustices of Versailles. Across Europe, other dictators seized control, exploiting fear and uncertainty to consolidate their power. Benito Mussolini in Italy with his fascist ideology, and Emperor Hirohito in Japan, driven by expansionist ambitions, formed a dangerous alliance with Hitler, creating the Axis powers, a formidable threat to world peace. The League of Nations, weakened by apathy and self-interest among its member states, proved powerless to stop the aggressors. On September 1, 1939, Hitler unleashed his Blitzkrieg, a lightning war on Poland, shattering the fragile peace. Utilizing tanks, mechanized infantry, and overwhelming air power, the German Wehrmacht crushed Polish resistance, sending shockwaves through Europe. Honoring their treaty obligations, Great Britain and France declared war on Germany, marking the beginning of World War II. What followed was a conflict of unprecedented scale and brutality, a clash of ideologies that would engulf the globe. The Nazi war machine, ruthless and efficient, swept across Europe, conquering Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and ultimately France in a matter of months. Great Britain, standing alone against the Nazi onslaught, braced for a German invasion. The Battle of Britain, a pivotal air campaign fought in the skies over England, showcased the courage and resilience of the Royal Air Force, who, against all odds, repelled the Luftwaffe, preventing a German invasion. In the east, Hitler, breaking his non-aggression pact with Stalin, unleashed Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. The Eastern Front became a theater of unimaginable brutality, a war of attrition that would claim millions of lives. The siege of Leningrad, the Battle of Stalingrad, and the relentless advance and subsequent retreat of the German army all etched themselves into the annals of history as examples of human endurance and suffering. On December 7, 1941, the conflict took a dramatic turn when Japan, seeking to cripple the United States Pacific Fleet and secure its dominance in Asia, launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The attack, a date which will live in infamy, as President Roosevelt declared, brought the United States into the war, tipping the balance against the Axis powers. American industrial might, coupled with the unwavering resolve of the Allied nations, turned the tide of the war. In North Africa, Allied forces drove back Rommel's Afrika Korps, while in Europe the D-Day invasion of Normandy, France, on June 6, 1944, marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. In the Pacific, island-hopping campaigns brought the fight closer to the Japanese mainland. The war culminated in August 1945 with the horrific atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, events that ushered in the nuclear age and cast a long shadow over the world. Japan surrendered on September 2, 1945, marking the end of World War II. The cost of victory was staggering. An estimated 40 to 85 million people perished in the conflict, making it the deadliest war in human history. Entire cities lay in ruins, economies were shattered, and the world grappled with the horrors of the Holocaust, a systematic genocide perpetrated by the Nazi regime that claimed the lives of 6 million Jews. In the aftermath of the war, the United Nations was formed, a successor to the League of Nations, with the goal of preventing future global conflicts. The world, however, found itself divided once more, this time by an ideological iron curtain that separated the capitalist West from the communist East, ushering in an era of geopolitical tension known as the Cold War. The ashes of World War II were still smoldering when a new global confrontation emerged, one that would define the latter half of the 20th century. This was not a war fought on traditional battlefields, but a clash of ideologies, a geopolitical chess match between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, each possessing a weapon capable of unimaginable destruction, the atomic bomb. The Cold War, as it became known, was born out of the ideological divide between the capitalist West, led by the United States, and the communist East, dominated by the Soviet Union. Both superpowers, suspicious of each other's intentions and vying for global influence, engaged in a multifaceted struggle that encompassed espionage, propaganda, proxy wars, and a terrifying nuclear arms race. In the aftermath of World War II, Europe, its infrastructure devastated and its spirit broken, became the primary battleground for this ideological conflict. Germany, divided by the victorious Allies, became a microcosm of the broader Cold War standoff. Berlin, the former German capital, lay deep within Soviet-controlled East Germany, a city divided by a wall, a stark symbol of the ideological Iron Curtain that separated East and West. The Berlin blockade of 1948, in which the Soviets attempted to starve West Berlin into submission, marked an early and dangerous escalation of Cold War tensions. The United States responded with the Berlin Airlift, a remarkable logistical feat that saw American and British pilots airlifting supplies to the besieged city for over a year. The blockade, while ultimately unsuccessful, highlighted the precarious balance of power and the ever-present threat of escalation. As the Cold War intensified, it spread beyond the confines of Europe, igniting conflicts in Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan. The Korean War, from 1950 to 1953, sparked by the Communist North's invasion of the South, became the first hot war of the Cold War, with the United States and its allies backing the South and China supporting the North. The war ended in a stalemate, but it solidified the Cold War's global reach. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. The Soviet Union's placement of nuclear-armed missiles in Cuba, a mere 90 miles from the US mainland, was met with a US naval blockade of the island. For 13 tense days, the world held its breath as President John F. Kennedy and Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev engaged in a high-stakes game of nuclear chicken. Cooler heads prevailed and a diplomatic solution was reached, but the crisis underscored the terrifying stakes of the Cold War. The Vietnam War, from 1955 to 1975, another proxy war, further entangled the United States in the Cold War quagmire. The war, which pitted the communist North Vietnamese against the US-backed South Vietnamese government, became a protracted and costly conflict that deeply divided American society. The fall of Saigon to North Vietnamese forces in 1975 marked a humiliating defeat for the United States and further emboldened communist movements worldwide. The Soviet Union, bogged down in Afghanistan in the 1980s and facing growing economic problems at home, began to crumble from within. The election of Mikhail Gorbachev as Soviet leader in 1985 ushered in a period of reform known as perestroika and glasnost, aimed at restructuring the Soviet system and increasing openness. However, these reforms, coupled with growing nationalist sentiment within the Soviet republics, proved to be the death knell for the Soviet Empire. On November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall, that potent symbol of Cold War division, fell as citizens from both East and West Berlin tore down the barrier that had separated them for decades. The fall of the Berlin Wall signaled the beginning of the end for the Cold War, and on December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union formally dissolved, bringing an end to the decades-long ideological struggle. The Cold War, although bloodless in terms of direct conflict between the superpowers, cast a long shadow over the world. It fueled proxy wars, spurred a terrifying nuclear arms race, and divided the world into two armed camps. Its legacy continues to shape international relations today, a reminder of the fragility of peace and the ever-present dangers of ideological extremism and unchecked ambition. The fall of the Berlin Wall and the subsequent collapse of the Soviet Union marked the end of an era, a victory for democracy and capitalism over communist ideology. Many hoped for a new world order, a more peaceful and prosperous world free from the threat of nuclear annihilation. However, the post-Cold War world proved to be anything but peaceful. Old rivalries resurfaced, ethnic conflicts erupted, and new threats such as terrorism and cyber warfare emerged, creating a complex and interconnected web of global challenges. The demise of the Soviet Union, while heralding the end of the Cold War, also created a power vacuum that fueled regional instability and allowed new actors to assert themselves on the world stage. The 1991 Gulf War, sparked by Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait, demonstrated the United States' willingness to use military force to protect its interests in the post-Cold War era. The US-led coalition's swift victory over Iraqi forces showcased the technological superiority of the American military, but it also highlighted the challenges of maintaining global order in a world without clear ideological divides. The spectre of terrorism, which had simmered beneath the surface of global politics for decades, exploded onto the world stage on September 11, 2001, with the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. The attacks, orchestrated by Osama bin Laden and his al-Qaeda terrorist network, ushered in a new era of global conflict, one defined by asymmetrical warfare, non-state actors, and the ever-present threat of terrorism. The US response to the 9/11 attacks, the war on terror, led to the invasion of Afghanistan, toppling the Taliban regime that had harbored al-Qaeda, and the subsequent invasion of Iraq in 2003, based on the Bush administration's claims of Iraq's possession of weapons of mass destruction. claims that later proved to be false. The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, while initially successful in toppling their respective regimes, became protracted and costly conflicts, mired in sectarian violence and instability. The wars highlighted the limitations of military power in addressing complex political and social challenges and underscored the unintended consequences of intervention in volatile regions. The Arab Spring uprisings of 2010 to 2011, which began with protests against authoritarian regimes in Tunisia, Egypt and Libya, initially offered hope for democratic reform in the Middle East. However, these uprisings also unleashed chaos and instability, creating opportunities for extremist groups such as ISIS to seize territory and spread their ideology of terror. The Syrian civil war, which erupted in 2011, became a microcosm of the complex and interconnected challenges of the post-Cold War world. The conflict, fueled by sectarian divisions, foreign intervention and the rise of extremist groups, has resulted in a devastating humanitarian crisis, displacing millions and claiming the lives of hundreds of thousands. In 2014, Russia, under the leadership of Vladimir Putin, annexed the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine, a move that sent shockwaves through Eastern Europe and marked a return to Cold War-style aggression. Russia's subsequent support for separatists in eastern Ukraine further fueled the conflict, raising tensions between Russia and the West to levels not seen since the Cold War. The ongoing war in Ukraine, which began with Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, has shattered the fragile peace in Europe and exposed the fragility of the rules-based international order. The conflict, which has already claimed thousands of lives and displaced millions, has also had a profound impact on the global economy, disrupting supply chains and exacerbating existing economic inequalities. The post-Cold War world, once envisioned as an era of peace and prosperity, has instead proven to be a period of persistent conflict and instability. Old rivalries have resurfaced, new threats have emerged, and the rules-based international order established in the aftermath of World War II is under increasing strain. As we navigate this uncertain terrain, it is essential to remember the lessons of the past, to seek diplomatic solutions to conflict, and to work collaboratively to address the shared challenges facing our interconnected world. The future of our planet may well depend on our ability to learn from the mistakes of the past and forge a new path toward a more peaceful and sustainable future. Our journey through the global wars of the past century has been a sobering one, a stark reminder of the human capacity for both great good and unimaginable destruction. From the trenches of World War I to the digital battlefields of today, we have witnessed the enduring impact of conflict on our world, the reshaping of borders, the toppling of empires, and the profound social, political, and economic consequences that reverberate for generations. While the nature of warfare has evolved over time, from the brutal trench warfare of World War I to the high-tech, interconnected battlefields of today, the underlying causes of conflict remain remarkably consistent. Unchecked ambition, ideological extremism, the pursuit of power, and the failure to find peaceful resolutions to our differences. As we confront the challenges of the 21st century, from climate change to global pandemics to the ongoing threat of nuclear proliferation, it is more important than ever to remember the lessons of the past. We must strive to build a world where dialogue and diplomacy replace violence and destruction, where cooperation and understanding triumph over suspicion and fear. As we have seen, global wars have left indelible marks on our world, reshaping borders, economies, and societies. While the nature of conflict evolves, understanding these historical events helps us navigate the complexities of today's global landscape. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history.